Hello all, welcome. We're going to look at a couple of videos today. First of all, we're going to see Premier Jacinta Allan responding in her own way to some of the controversy about Dan Andrews heading to the World War II Victory Day celebrations in China.
The axis of evil gathering.
And he attended as a private citizen. Everybody's seen the photograph of him, the video of him meeting President Xi and then being part of a group photograph. And it's extraordinary because the Australian government, the Australian Labor government, did not send any high-level diplomats, did not even send any low-level diplomats to this event because we have a very contentious relationship with China. They're our biggest trading partner. They're the biggest dog in this part of the world. They're trying to be the biggest dog in the entirety of the world. And they're challenging the hegemony of the USA, which is our closest ally in the world. So the relationship is very sensitive, very delicate, and for a private citizen to go there as a pseudo-representative of Australia or a self-appointed representative of Australia, or worse, a Chinese government deemed representative of Australia, because that's what it looked like.
Well, I think that's a pretty, a big question is, why was he invited? I mean, Kim Jong Un, Vladimir Putin, Daniel Andrews. That's a pretty weird. That's a pretty weird spot to be invited to that party, isn't it?
It's for the ex-premier of a state of 5 million people. Is
a serial liar as well. We should just throw that in there.
Well, put that aside. That's debatable, but it's not even necessary for the point of sort of at issue. He's there with the president of a country of 1.3, 1.5 billion people, the greatest emerging strategic power the world has seen for a long time, challenging US hegemony, guests of honor alongside Dan, with the axis of evil, as you say, Putin and Kim Jong-il.
Was it the Iranian, was it the Ayatollah there as well?
Plus the Iranian Prime Minister. And Dan Andrews.
Oh, God. You can make it up. And Bob Carr. Like, what the hell? We got two. Not one, but two of these low-level nobodies have turned up to this thing.
But no, that's the point. Bob Carr's not a low-level nobody. He was a state premier and he was a foreign minister and a very respected foreign minister.
Okay, sorry. I'm being a bit disingenuous.
So he's an elder statesman of Australian political life. And he's always been a great advocate, a great fan of China on many levels. And he thinks, well, he's one of the folks that thinks our strategic sort of relationship should be more looking towards China than the US. Now, he has his point of views, may or may not agree with him, but he makes the case. And as a friend of China, China said, well, if Albo's not going to come to our celebration, not that they maybe wanted to invite him, but we'll invite friends of China, Carr and Andrews. And they're probably the two highest profile pro-China guys in Australia.
Kevin Rudd, but yeah, he's not in Australia, but yeah.
Is Kevin Rudd a pro-China guy?
Oh, I kind of remember he was, he fancied himself as a Mandarin-speaking diplomat to China, didn't he?
Yeah, but that doesn't necessarily make him a pro-China guy, does it? I mean, he's definitely culturally educated on. Yep. And he works for Albo anyway, so he does what Albo tells him.
He's over in America, annoying Trump.
So Dan and Bob, as private citizens, were accorded invitation, but as former politicians, elder statesmen of Australian politics, were invited to this event. I can understand Bob wanting to go because he's a great friend of China and he thinks Australia's political class not seeing China as a great friend is a mistake. So he had an ideological underpinning, which he makes the case for over and over again. Dan Andrews seems to have gone on the basis that it supports his personal commercial ambitions. That is, to have a little consulting business being a point of intermediary between China and Australia.
Yeah.
And making a lot of money doing so. That was his motivation.
And re-kickstart the Belt and Road Initiative in Victoria/Australia.
Yeah. So Albo doesn't get an invite or chooses not to accept the invite and or both. And Dan Andrews says, no worries, I'll put myself on stage. I'll represent Australia. I mean, that's an affront to the sort of foreign political process that the Australian government has to run. And that was the real problem here. I'm the Prime Minister of the country, I'm trying to run a foreign policy, and this fuckwit ex-premier from Victoria is going behind my back. At least Bob Carr had this good sense to sort of say, listen, I'm coming to China, I want to celebrate China, but I'm not going to embarrass my Prime Minister by standing on stage with other world leaders when Albo either declined the invitation or was not invited in the first instance. That's how I see the case. Jacinta Allan obviously either sees it differently or wants to run cover for Dan by trying to reframe the critique of Dan as something entirely different.
Well, that's the interesting thing, isn't it? She's turned people questioning Dan Andrews attending this event into the general public of Australia carrying some sort of anti-Chinese sentiment that's so strong and so visible that it's visibly disturbing the Chinese citizens of this state, or at least of Melbourne.
So citizens of this country who are from Chinese heritage.
Yeah, Chinese Australians who live in Melbourne.
And the kids.
Oh, yeah, well, let's listen to what she has to say. But that's, I mean, I'm a little bit confused about why she's even making this statement. But this is coming off the back of a march of people who have objected to ongoing mass immigration into Australia. She's already spoken about how the Indian community are terrified because of the idea of the concept of this march. She's also made a public statement that we're actually a nation of foreigners, sort of alluding to the fact that we don't have a cultural identity and that we're all, I don't even know what that meant. But anyway, let's just list, because it's a little bit confusing about, this is, to me, is implying that someone in the Chinese community, or a large number of the leaders, have gone to her and said, look, we're really, really worried for our safety on the streets of Melbourne.
It's the same bullshit. If she disagrees with somebody's political attack on her or on her former colleague Dan Andrews, she just cries racism.
Yeah.
That's her go-to.
And
it's so lame. But
should we also just quickly point out to any viewers that aren't local that
yes,
we do have a major problem with crime on the streets of Melbourne.
Okay.
And it involves youth gangs, mostly of a specific ethnicity, carrying weapons.
How are you bringing that into the Jacinta Allan angle about Dan Andrews in China?
Well, because she's talking about people being afraid. She's saying,
I see.
Chinese citizens are afraid. And I'm saying, well, I think most people in general at the moment are afraid, particularly people that live, say, for example, in Brighton, who are being subjected to home invasions and carjackings and, machete gang crimes in malls. I mean, they're afraid, but I haven't heard any public announcements about, how she's going to allay their fears.
That's true. Put that aside. Put Brighton aside. It's Melbourne-wide.
Oh, I just threw Brighton in there because they just happen to... A lot of reports come out of how they'd like to go down there and still... It's just anyway, it's all Melbourne.
It's Melbourne-wide. It's not socio-economic specific. It is Melbourne-wide.
But as I say, I haven't seen a public announcement to make us feel less worried about what's going on.
All right, well, let's see what she's got to say.
There's been a lot of talk about China this week, and amid all of the talk, my focus is on Chinese Victorians, making sure that they feel welcome and respected here in Victoria. Also too, the Chinese Victorian kids who hear all this talk, and it affects them in ways that we just don't understand. Well, as Premier, I'll always stand with our multicultural...
No idea what the fuck she's talking about.
We don't understand the way it affects them because say it affects them is nonsense.
Yeah, Chinese kids are... Where does she get this? Like, what, did she do a poll of Chinese kids? And they've all gone, yeah, we're really stressed out about this?
Yeah.
Where'd she come up with this nonsense?
You're right, and her PR spin people came up with this. But what she's effectively saying is, if you're concerned about Dan Andrews usurping the sort of foreign policy process of the elected government of Australia, you're in fact making Chinese kids feel racially vilified.
Is she directing this to Dan Andrews, or is she sort of more directing it to the March for Australia? Because when the Indians were upset recently, she made a similar sort of PR video. It was about March for Australia.
They weren't upset though. It was the same bullshit spin.
We know let's accept that whatever she's saying is probably not true, but that was her angle.
Yes, it's a playbook.
So I'm wondering, is she referring to people being upset because of the March for Australia, or is this about...
This is Dan Andrews. This is Dan Andrews going to China.
So Dan Andrews has gone to China,
Yeah.
and people in general have said, oh, that's a bit strange.
Not only people in general, the entire Labor government, Liberal opposition, not the entirety, but very prominent representatives of each side of politics have each said, dude, that's not cool.
But how does that bounce back to the Chinese community of the whole of Victoria feeling unsafe?
Well, it doesn't, but she's just framing it that way to try and shift the political discussion to give her friend Dan a little bit of cover for what he's done.
Because I kind of think, let's keep going, but the word multicultural's come up on the screen, and I think that's core and centre with her argument.
No.
There's some sort of lack of social cohesion.
I think you're complicating it, Slice.
Maybe.
Sorry, I don't have the answers. My view is this, right?
Yeah.
As a politician, every day you face policy challenges, social challenges, crime challenges, election challenges, opposition challenges. People are coming at you at all angles, trying to critique what you're doing, trying to get you to shift your policy, change your policy, criticise your policy, yada, yada, yada. Every day she's dealing with every sort of assault on her and her ministers and her government, right? Some of those assaults, for want of a better word, are legitimate criticism, and that's part of the process of democracy. Some of them are less reasonable, and she's used to it. She's actually a highly trained athlete in that sense. She's fit. She's very fit in receiving these and batting them away, right? One thing that she's leaned into recently is to frame any criticism of her government, her positions, her policies, is to call them racist, and in that way smear those people making what often I think is legitimate criticism. But once you call something racist, label it racist, a lot of us hear that word and go, oh, that's no good. And you can effectively, by deeming it to be racist, shut down legitimate criticism. So she doesn't have to address the criticism. She just calls it racist and says, I don't need to address it, you're racist.
Yeah. And as I say, I'm very confused as to where she's got the concept that the Chinese Australians are feeling. Let's see what she says again.
She's making it up, dude. I'm saying it's just a framing trick. There's no Chinese people that are fucking upset because Dan Andrews has been criticised for going to China. But she's going to say they're upset and call people who are criticising Dan racist in order to shut those people up so Dan doesn't have to deal with that criticism anymore. And by extension, she doesn't have to deal with that criticism anymore because she is close with Dan. She was his deputy premier for many years, and now she's his successor as premier. So Dan looking bad sucks because he's a friend of hers, but also sucks because they're under the same umbrella. They're sort of seen as, closely aligned personalities and politicians.
Okay, well, let's see what she has to say.
There's been a lot of talk about China this week, and amid all of the talk, my focus is on Chinese Victorians, making sure that they feel welcome and respected here in Victoria. Also, too, the Chinese Victorian kids who hear all this talk.
That's the key. People from China who are in Victoria apparently don't feel welcomed and respected because Dan Andrews is criticised for going to China.
But a week ago they were okay. A week ago they were fine.
Yeah.
They thought they were just, integrated, happily, harmoniously living in Victorian society. But now something's changed. Radically. There's been a radical change.
Because that event happened.
Because Dan Andrews went to see a military parade.
Yeah, so when we say Dan Andrews has done the wrong thing, it highlights that we do have a contentious relationship with the CCP, with China, the country, right? And so she's saying, well, you're criticising Dan, but you're also pointing out that we have a contentious relationship with China, so that's tough for Chinese kids who are living in Australia.
So she's saying that it's actually not a bad thing that Dan Andrews went to this parade However, the byproduct of him going to the parade is that now Chinese people feel unsafe, and that's actually the fault of the people of Victoria.
Well, I think she's saying
Is that? I'm trying to like. Is that what she's saying though? Like,
she's saying the criticism of Dan Andrews going to China, who is we have a contentious relationship with, because we're criticising Dan, that in that way we're disrespecting and making feel unsafe Chinese people live in Australia. That's her point.
all Victorian Chinese people and their kids. All right. Well, let's see what she said about the kids.
Can I ask you one question?
Yeah.
Plenty of people criticise the fuck out of Israel. There are plenty of Israeli kids who live in Victoria as Australians. They're Australian, but they have Israel heritage or family. I've not heard her get on the TV and say, "Oh, I'm worried about the Israeli kids living in Melbourne."
No, the only time she went down to when the synagogue got firebombed, the moment they started asking her any direct questions, she leaked it. She wouldn't even answer their concerns. She just bailed.
But the point is, you can't shut down criticism of Israel because there are some kids in Melbourne who have Israeli heritage or they're Israeli, and they're going to feel concerned. You've got to keep the criticism respectful and not dangerous and not intimidating, but you're allowed to criticise Israel, right?
Well, more than allowed. It's kind of it's almost a government policy to do it.
Yeah, well, that's true. But the fact is, can you see the double standard I'm trying to illustrate?
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, you're preaching the converted there, mate.
Two-tier Jacinta.
Oh, mate, she's not even two-tier. She's just she's in this fucking pseudo world. She's invented. It's like The Sims. She's created this world where all this shit that actually isn't happening in her mind is happening, and then she's presenting it to us as it's a reality and a problem. But anyway, continue with her.
She's no dummy. She knows what she's doing. She knows she's making shit up.
But I'm just saying that what she's saying is clearly fictitious, and she knows it. But you're right. She's intelligent, and she's using it to manipulate the political narrative to her own benefit.
Yes.
However, I think she's doing it in such a clumsy way now. She's getting her method has become so obviously flawed.
Well, no, I think she's overdone it. She's pulled the same ruse so many times, we're starting to see it clearly for what it is.
Yeah, I mean, her whole TikTok feed is just these propaganda clips that we know are nonsense. So, yeah, sorry.
I see this, and I would like to see the leader of the opposition, Batten, and I think of Batten, the current leader, and Pasuto, his predecessor, I'd like to see them get up and actually counter this by saying, how on earth can you declare criticism of Dan Andrews and our contentious relationship with China as off limits in the public discourse on the basis that you're asserting that there are kids in China, certain kids who are Chinese descent feel frightened? A, it's probably not true. B, the dangers of shutting down public discourse in a democracy are manifest. And fucking Batten and fucking Pasuto was just as bad. Seem congenitally incapable of actually prosecuting the response to this sort of game that she's playing.
Well, let's play out the whole clip, because I kind of feel like what she's doing is she's framing it in that we live in a multicultural utopia.
Yeah.
And that's being threatened from multiple angles by everyday Australians.
Okay.
Anyway, let's just see what she has to say.
Affects them in ways that we just don't understand. Well, as Premier, I'll always stand with our multicultural communities and always respect them. I've stood with you over the course of this week, and I will always stand and fight for you and fight against those who try and divide us. And I do that because it is our great, strong multicultural communities and Victorians who make this state the great state that it is.
And the problem is that the more they shout this racist...
Who, when I listen to that statement that she just made, I feel like she's dismissing every single anyone who's not considered a multicultural Australian as having any benefit whatsoever to society.
Aren't we all multicultural?
Well, that's on one hand we are, but then how could she be standing up for the multicultural community if we're all foreigners? Like, who the hell is she standing up for?
I don't know. I don't know what she's trying to say.
Have you paused it? Or you?
No, we're recording.
Oh.
You're right. I get a bit confused, but it's only because if we try and explain the illogic of everything she does, it's a rabbit hole that you get lost down. You've almost got to say, hold on a minute. Let's just start with the lack of logic at the primary level. And once we understand she's just trying to frame things politically to sort of suit her own agenda, then you sort of say, all right, that's what she's doing. I don't need to explain it much further than that. I mean, I'm happy to if she wants to debate it, but...
I think an excellent experiment would be to walk through the CBD at 10 o'clock on a Monday morning and just politely ask each person that we bump into, oh, excuse me, are you perhaps a Chinese Australian?
I don't want to presume from your appearance, but...
Well, I don't know. We'll word it. Just anyway, just try and identify the Chinese Australians, and then just ask them.
I don't want to be presumptuous, but
are they experiencing a level of fear, and how about their children? How fearful are they of the current plunge?
But see, I wouldn't. I mean, it's bullshit. Like, if we do that, you should say, oh, it was a narrow subset. You rigged the survey. You edited the interviews you did. Blah blah blah. That's what you're saying.
As we said, I know 2 people that I can ask straight away. And if they were distressed, I'd know about it immediately.
But okay, but this is what I'm saying. To go down to that level, you're playing into her hands, because we'll do that, and she'll accuse our sample size of being somehow biased, or our editing being biased. You've just got to take it at the first level and say, hold on a minute. China is a geopolitical rival of our greatest defender and greatest ally, which is the US, right? China is a geopolitical rival, even though we're minnows, of us. They send warships in the Tasman Strait between New Zealand and Australia and do live fire drills unannounced. To then drive around Australia with their flotilla of spy boats, right? Basically, as a show,
sonic bombs on our divers, acts of aggression.
Yeah, acts of aggression,
passive aggression almost, but
acts of intimidation, and they're sending a message like this is geopolitics 101. They're saying, hey, as their parade last week was, we're the big dog in Asia now, and soon we're going to be the big dog on the planet. So when you deal with us at a political level, you better show a certain deference. That's the way...
Well, that is their playbook, isn't it? If anything we do displeases them, they just send their ambassador in and tell us, don't do that or else. Yeah,
or we're going to cut off barley exports or wine exports or lobster exports or whatever it is of the day. But I'm not saying this as a knock against China. This is geopolitics 101. The US has been doing it for decades, and still to today. Trump with all his tariffs and so on. That's geopolitics. Biden with his wars around the world, and George Bush with his wars around the world, and Obama with his drone bombing campaigns in Syria, yada, 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 and Libya, right? And then the British used to do that. The Soviet Russia used to do that. Every regional player does that. So it's not a critique of China. Sorry, it's not a specific critique of China or with a racist bent to talk about this. It's a geopolitical reality. Yet, old mate Jacinta says, if you dare to think about this or even utter it out loud and criticise her mate Dan, who's in the middle of it all.
Well, it's going to be the downfall of our multicultural society as we know it, and Chinese people are going to be too frightened to live there. Anyway, look,
she's effectively leading to the place where, in a multicultural society, it's actually going to work against cohesion to criticise any particular country in the world where any of those people have come from.
I think that's the frightening thing, isn't it? It's not even... The idea of racism is... The idea that the Chinese people would be fearful is that someone would be walking down the street calling them names or abusing them or whatever on the grounds that they're Chinese. You know, that's the message I got. That's what she's scared of.
Yeah.
But just doesn't happen.
It doesn't happen. B,
it certainly hasn't just started happening in the last week.
D, she doesn't give a shit about Israeli kids. C, she doesn't give a shit about Russian kids. Iranian kids.
And as I said, I bet my bottom dollar she isn't actually friends with any Chinese people.
She knows everybody, dude, though, don't you think?
Well,
in politics you do.
But I don't think she's having dinner parties with... Anyway, who knows what she's doing.
Do politicians have friends?
Who bloody knows? But all I know is that she's generalised, and there's no way that every Chinese in Victoria is currently fearing for their lives.
Imagine when 2 weeks ago an Albo threw out the Iranian ambassador to Australia. based on ASIO's advice that they'd done those terrorist attacks against Jewish sites, which is a whole different kettle of fish. But just, Albo did it. Let's just focus on that. Did Jacinta Allan get on the TV and say, "Oh, I'm really worried about kids of Iranian descent in Victoria"?
My Persian Australian friends, there's no need to fear. I will fight for you to the death.
And how dare Albo throw out your ambassador? Like, that's a racist, that's an act of anti-multiculturalism.
Pretty radical act, isn't it? Well, it was the only time it's been done since World War II.
Yeah.
On very flimsy evidence.
Oh, no. The evidence was provided by, with the assistance of Mossad.
I'll tell you what, though. If that's the best that the Iranians can do to disrupt the politics of Australia,
yeah,
we have nothing to fear from Iran. We can just, like, relax. They're really... The worst thing they're going to do is just throw a Molotov cocktail at a synagogue.
Well, sorry, late at night when there were people there, but
3 in the
fortunately,
morning.
nobody was hurt.
Yeah, 3 in the morning.
Christ.
Yeah.
It's
and it
so
was one
key.
dude, wasn't it? It wasn't like...
Oh, it's a couple of kids.
Was it 2?
No, 2 or 3 kids in a stolen blue VW Golf, which that same Golf had been used in, like, smash and grabs in Doncaster Shopping Centre and a drive-by, who knows what.
That's incredible. They probably wouldn't have been able to solve any of those crimes if it hadn't been for the terrorist plot that they unfoiled.
Well, no, I think that's how they came back to the kids who firebombed the synagogue, is that all their mates had stolen this car weeks earlier, and they were sharing it amongst themselves to commit various crimes around Melbourne over that 2-week period. Like the petty crimes to the synagogue terrorism crime, the same group of kids.
I was kind of almost thinking, well, maybe they used that car because it had been used in so many crimes that they knew that the police aren't going to bother to pursue those petty crimes. So they're pretty safe to drive that stolen car around.
Well, yeah, well, no. And, well, okay, if they thought that, it backfired because some kid who'd done like some petty petrol drive-off in the car, he ended up getting arrested by Terrorism Task Force, AFP, guys with fucking camo and machine guns. And he's like, what? Just did a petrol drive-by.
And doesn't that beg the question that someone who's got links to the Iranian, what is it, the Iranian Guard,
Yeah.
is doing, can't afford to buy his petrol? I mean, he has to go and steal petrol, but he's being funded by the Iranian government.
Jesus Christ.
Oh, okay. Well, let's move on to the next one.